over, and the bear's on top of him. The bear's right there, and he's got his paw back, and he's fixing to just, end his life. And all of a sudden, the atheist cries out. He says, "Oh my God!" And everything froze. It was silence in the forest. The river froze. The birds quit saying. Everything was just totally silent. And as it got silent, he looked up, and this bright light shone down on him from the sky. And when the bright light came down on him, this voice from the light said, "I thought you were an atheist, that you didn't believe in me." And he said, I still don't know that I believe in you or not, and I've probably gone too far. So beside the fact I'm not ready to be a Christian yet, but I'm just asking you to please make this bear a Christian. And the voice says, "Okay, I can do that." And so the river immediately unfreezes, the birds start singing again, and the trees start rustling again, and this bear that has his paw back ready to end his life, he stops, he brings his paw down, and he folds them. And he says, "Dear God, for this food I'm about to receive, I am thankful." We're talking this morning about gratefulness or gratitude. It'd be interesting if we could pull back the curtain of our heart this morning and look inside to see what's really inside of us, to look in there and see if there's gratitude in our heart. You see, I believe we get up every single day of our life. We get up and we have a choice on how we will live that particular day. We can live it engaged or disengaged. We can live that day with love, or we can live it with hate. We can live it with forgiveness, or we can withhold forgiveness. We can live that day to be served, or we could live that day to serve. We also have the choice when we get up that we can live that day griping and complaining and groaning, or we can live that day with gratitude for everything. You see, it's interesting because I know a lot of people who have a lot with very little gratitude, and I know some people that have very little with a lot of gratitude. It's a choice that we make every single day. That choice sets the tone for the rest of our day, and it not only affects our lives, it affects everyone around us. It affects our spouse, our children, our friends, our family. It affects our co-workers. It affects our classmates. It affects every single person around us. The choice that we make every day. And that single choice that we can make every single day that will make the greatest difference is this. It's gratitude. Gratitude. It's a choice that we make. One writer said, "The joy of living comes from a heart of gratitude." Another writer says, "Gratitude is the firstborn child of grace." And I love this, he said, "It's the appropriate response of the blessed." In fact, it's such an appropriate and expected response that its absence really surprises Jesus. It's a surprise to him when we don't have gratitude. And we find this story in Luke's Gospel, chapter 17, and we can read along. And I'm going to be really out of sync today because I'm used to going to this side, so we'll do it over here. It happened that as he made his way toward Jerusalem, talking about Jesus, he crossed over the border between Samaria and Galilee, and as he entered a village, 10 men, all lepers, met him. They kept their distance, but they raised their voices, calling out, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." Taking a good look at him, he said, "Go and show yourself to the priest." And we're going to just pause right there for just a minute. 10 men show up in this town this village Jesus is in. It said 10 of them showed up with leprosy. We don't want to just breeze over that this morning. Leprosy. It was a horrible disease. Horrible disease. As well as it caused isolation in your life. You couldn't be with the general public if you had leprosy. The fact that when you were given a diagnosis of leprosy, it was like giving you a death sentence. It was like saying, "You're done. There's no cure. You're just going to live out your days in misery until you finally die." The appearance of leprosy, it was repulsive to people. They had lumps on their cheeks, lumps on their nose, on their lips, on their forehead. Their vocal cords were ulcerated, so they had this raspy wheeze when they talked. Their lack of eyebrows just highlighted their sunken eyes, and it made them look so hollow. The muscles would break down. Tendons would contract to the point that their hands resembled claws rather than hands, and their bodies would be bent over and slumped. In fact, lepers, they had to announce themselves. And we read in the story where they cried out to Jesus. The lepers, they had to announce themselves when they walked into a public place or into a village. They'd either have to cry out that they were unclean or they had to cry out they had leprosy, but they had to warn the general public that, hey, I've got leprosy and I'm in the area. And they had to warn people of this. And as they would announce that, people would scatter. Parents would grab their kids. People would close their doors. They'd pull the blinds. I mean, people would scatter when they heard the word leprosy. It's kind of like the same thing that happens when you announce Volunteer Sunday at church. I mean, people just, they're gone. They're like, leprosy. People avoided lepers at all cost and with great cause. So when everyone else had scattered, when everyone else saw that the lepers were coming and they got out of the way and they stepped back, Jesus stepped in. And as Jesus stepped in, he made this statement. So taking a good look at them, he said, go, show yourself to the priest. Wouldn't it have been amazing to be around and witness this miracle? No therapy, no treatment, no drugs, no medication, just one man and one command. And he said, just go show yourself to the priest. And bam, they were healed. They were healed. They were completely made whole of leprosy. Completely healed. Their hands, the gnarled hands began to straighten out. And open sores began to close. They regained new energy. This mass of misery became a leaping, celebrating mass of joy and health. The walking dead resurrected to new life. I mean, can you imagine how these lepers felt? If you're a Christ follower, you can. Because what Jesus did for the lepers physically, he has done for us spiritually. You see, sin makes lepers out of all of us, and it turns us into corpse. It turns us into the dead. In fact, Paul described it this way in his writings in Ephesians 2. It's gone. In Ephesians 2, he said, you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins. You were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins. And then he goes on in that same chapter and he describes us this way. He said, you were dead in your transgressions. You were futile in your thinking. You were darkened in your understanding. You were separated from God, without hope, without God, controlled by your sinful nature. You were slaves to sin. I don't know about you, but I've heard better reports given by a coroner than this. He said it was pretty bad. You're dead. You're done. You're hopeless. But then Paul goes on to make this statement as well in Ephesians 2, 4, and 5. He said, but because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. And I love this last part. He said, for it is by grace you have been saved. By grace you've been saved. He still swaps sin rags for righteous robes. He still heals. He still restores. And he still looks for gratitude. You see, the story continues, and it goes on to say this. When one of them saw that he was healed, he went back to Jesus, praising God in a loud voice. And then he bowed down at Jesus' feet, and he thanked him. And this man was a Samaritan. Jesus said, weren't there 10 men healed? Where are the other 9? Is this Samaritan the only one who came back to thank God? You see, the returning leper caught Jesus' attention, but so did the absence of the other 9. Don't miss the headline of this story, okay? Don't miss the big moment of this story. And that is simply this: God notices the grateful heart. God notices the grateful heart. Why? Does God have an ego problem and he needs something to just stoke him up? No, it's because we have an ego problem. You see, gratitude lifts our eyes off of the things that we lack so we might see the blessings we possess. Let me say that again because I really want that to sink in this morning. Gratitude lifts our eyes off of the things that we lack so that we may see the blessings that we possess. So is it possible to daily make a choice to be grateful and to live a life of gratitude regardless of what's going on in our lives? The answer to that question is yes. Yes. And here's how. I want to give you a couple of things this morning. How are we going to live a daily life of gratitude? Number one is we're going to major on the grace of God. Major on the grace of God. Focus on the cross of Christ. Linger at the foot of the cross for a little while. Reacquaint yourself with the work of God's grace. Ephesians 2, Paul says, "It is only by God's grace that you have been saved." God saved you by His grace when you believe. You can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. It's so easy to lose sight of God's amazing grace once we're saved. We become easily distracted, don't we? We become ungrateful at times. And what once humbled us and stirred us and saved us, now it's become like a second nature to us. It got us in, and we'll take it from here kind of thing. Oh yeah, we needed grace to save. We needed grace to pull us out of the hole of sin. But once we're out, we can live with or without grace. I mean, we can handle this on our own. Or we're thankful for grace, that the grace that was for everyone until we got in, and now we're kind of sparsing out that grace of who deserves it and who shouldn't get it and who is deserving of it. And instead of focusing on amazing grace that saved us, now we become judgmental of others, and we pass judgment on those who deserve grace and those who don't deserve grace. We become distracted and, in essence, ungrateful for the grace of God. Kind of like making the same mistake that Scott Simpson, a professional golfer, played many times at the Masters. He had his caddy, and his caddy made the same mistake. They once played at the Masters, which is played at Augusta National Golf Club, and if you've ever been there, I know some of you guys have been there. Beautiful course. I mean, it's probably one of the premier courses in the world, and one writer described it. He said it's like stepping into an oil painting. I mean, everything is perfect. Everything is manicured. Everything is made to perfection. And as they got ready to play, Simpson told his caddy, he said, "You won't see a single weed all week long." So imagine Simpson's surprise when on Sunday, after they'd been walking 5 days playing the course in this tournament, his caddy stopped him and he pointed to the ground and he said, "Found one. I found one." Don't we do the same? Don't we do the same? We're in a beautiful garden of God's grace, surrounded by His love and His mercy and blooms, expressions of His loving grace toward us. But we go on weed hunts. And how many flowers and expressions of God's loving grace do we miss because we're focusing on the weeds? And let me just tell you, you look long enough, you're going to find something to complain about, something to criticize, something to whine about. So quit looking for it, and let's lift our eyes off of the weeds and focus on the grace of God. And the second thing is simply this: count the gifts. Count the blessings of God in your life. Catalog His kindness. Recall all the reasons that you have for gratitude, and then recite them. April of 2013, I left Eufaula to go on a sabbatical. I was totally empty. I was drained. There was nothing in the tank, so to speak. And when I went on this sabbatical, I remember I carried my books, my Bible, and the stuff I normally carry with me. And I got to the place I was staying. And I was just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there was nothing there. And I remember walking into the place I was staying, unpacked my stuff, and I stepped out on the balcony and sat down in a chair. And I remember sitting there not feeling a thing. just numb. And I was like, God, this is going to be a waste of time, a waste of a week, because God, I don't feel you, I don't sense you, there's nothing happening, and I was just really hurting and empty inside. Didn't even know where to begin. And I remember sitting on the patio or the balcony, and I was looking out over the Gulf. And suddenly, and I've never heard the audible voice of God, I've never heard God speak out loud. If it did, it'd scare me to death. I'd die and be with Him in heaven, probably. But I sensed something in my heart so strong. And He said, why don't you go grab a piece of paper, and why don't you just write a few things that you're thankful for? Now, I'll never forget, I thought it was kind of a girly looking pad. I don't know how I wound up with it in my backpack. But I went and pulled this out of my backpack, and I sat down at a little round table out on the balcony that day. And I opened it up, and I got my pen out, and I sat there for probably 30 minutes staring at a blank piece of paper. And I remember just feeling, God said, Chris, just write what you're thankful for. April 10th, 2013, across the top of the page, I said, today, I'm thankful for. And it was like something broke loose inside of me. And for the next 8 or 9 pages, I couldn't stop writing. I just started, God, for a wonderful, loving God who loves me unconditionally. And I wrote and wrote and wrote. And something happened inside of me that day. And I left. It was probably one of the greatest sabbaticals I ever had. Because when I left that sabbatical, my heart was full. My heart was full. I realized, here I am mully-grubbing. Here I am curled up in a fetal position in the corner. Poor me and poor, all that. And I realized, God, you've given me so much to be thankful for. Reminded me of the words of 1 Thessalonians in Paul's writings. He said, always be joyful. Never stop praying. And this, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for those who belong to Jesus Christ. He said, be thankful, not for everything that's happening to you. No, that'd be crazy. He said, but be thankful in everything that's happening. Be thankful for all the circumstances that are going on in your life. He said, for this is God's will for those who belong to Him. It seems strange that a man sitting in a prison cell would write these words saying, hey, be thankful, be joyful, rejoice, count it all joy when you're in tough places. Basically, what Paul was telling us was this. He was saying our inner attitudes don't have to reflect our outer circumstances. Our inner attitudes don't have to reflect our outer circumstances. I heard the father relate the story. His daughter, Sydney Connell, he had given her a brand new bike, and she called him one day at work with the bad news that her bike had been stolen. And he expected her to just be upset and all distressed and all crazy. But when she called her dad, she sounded honored, and she said these words to her dad. She said, Dad, of all the bikes they could have stolen, they took mine. That's thankful in all circumstances. That's an inner attitude that doesn't reflect our outer circumstances. So here's the challenge I want to give you this morning. Here's the challenge. I want you, for 7 days, starting today, I would love for you to keep a gratitude journal. A gratitude. And I know immediately the guys are groaning, I don't do that. Well, let me just give you a few kickstarters here, okay? Number 1, you're alive. Number 2, you can write. Number 2, you can probably read. That's 3 things right there that you could start your journal with. But every day for 7 days, the top of your paper, put, today, God, I am thankful for, and just let. You don't have to come up with 7 pages. You may come up with 2 things. You may come up with 7 things, or you may go write a book as a result of all this. But for 7 days, just keep a journal and just, God, here's what I'm grateful for. Here's what I'm thankful for. But here's the kicker, okay? Here's the kicker. No generalities. No generalities. No just going, well, God, I'm thankful today because I'm blessed. Throw it out, okay? Be specific. Write specifically what you're thankful for. Don't just say, well, God, I'm thankful for all of my friends. Start writing the names of your friends down and why you're thankful for them. Well, I'm thankful for my wife. Well, write out why you're thankful for your wife. I'm thankful for my kids. Write out why you're thankful for your kids. Don't just list blessings and clump it all together. Be specific. Be specific. What are you grateful for? And I challenge you to do this for the next 7 days. You go, well, I don't feel like it. Or I just got a lot going on in my life right now. Or things are real tough for me right now. Well, that's the problem, is because we've associated gratitude and worship with a feeling or with a circumstance or with a season of the year. And nothing could be farther from the truth. The reality is that gratitude is a choice. It's a decision. It's a choice. Isaiah 61:3, he tells us, he said, put on the garment of praise. Put on a garment of thanksgiving. Put on a garment of gratitude for a spirit of heaviness or depression or a spirit of gloominess. He said, put on a garment of praise. For example, you got up today, you decided what you were going to wear. You did it, or your wife did it, or somebody did it, but you're here and you're dressed, and that's good. It would have been bad otherwise. You went to your closet, you pulled out an outfit, or you went to the dresser drawer and pulled out an outfit, or you dug in the bottom of the hamper and got out an outfit. I don't know, but you chose what you were going to wear today. Every day we have a choice when we get up of what we're going to walk out wearing. And you can walk out wearing despair. You can walk out wearing entitlement. You can walk out wearing grumpiness. You can walk out wearing complaining. Kind of like the lady who said she wakes up grumpy some mornings. Other mornings she lets him sleep in. You can decide what you're going to wear. And some of you that just right over. Make gratitude your default decision. Make it your default choice every day, that I'll have a heart of gratitude today. The psalmist said this, Psalms 34. He said, I will bless the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak His praise. The psalmist was basically saying this, I have a choice. It's my choice. I will or I will not bless the Lord at all times. I will or I will not continually have His praise upon my lips. He said, I make a choice. It's our choice, our decision. And listen to me. If anyone has cause to be grateful, it's you. And it's me. Let me give you just a few things. If you own a Bible, you're abundantly blessed, because 1/3 of the people of the world don't even have access to a Bible. If you can read your Bible, you're more blessed than 2 million plus people in the world who can't read anything at all. If you woke up this morning with more health than illness in your body, you're more blessed than 1 million people who will not survive this week. If you've never experienced the danger of battle, of loneliness or imprisonment, or the agony of torture, or the pangs of starvation, you're more fortunate than 5 million people on this planet. If you have food in your refrigerator and clothes on your back and a roof over your head and $20 in your pocket and a place to sleep, listen to me, you are richer than 75% of the world. 3 billion people in the world live on $2 or less a day. That means if you earn $37,000 a year, you're in the top 4% of the wage earners in the world. If your income is $41,000, you're in the top 3% of the people in the world. And if you make over $48,000, congratulations, you're in the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the world. So yes, you do have a lot to be grateful for. And perhaps when I'm mully-grubbing and complaining and whining and I'm just too busy with my blessings to express my gratitude, just perhaps I'm insulting the heart of the God who gave me all these blessings. If by chance we feel God has done nothing for us or that He has forgotten us, let me just say this. And I speak for myself this morning, that if He never does anything else for me, He's done enough for me already that I should be grateful every single day of my life. You say, how? Because God so loved me that He gave His Son for me, that He forgave me of my sins, which were many, and He prepared a place for me to spend with Him for eternity. He went to a cross. He died a horrible death for sins that I committed and things that I had done wrong. He rose again from the grave to make way for forgiveness of my sins in the future and to give me life everlasting. And all of this is His doing. Has nothing to do with me or my efforts or how good I am or how bad I am. It was solely based upon His grace. So yes, I have reason today to be grateful because of the amazing grace of God that saved a sinner like me. So as the band comes and gets ready to do a final song, I want to ask you this question. What will you leave this place today focusing on?